Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah. Uh, so, good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Mary Sherry, and I am doing my post graduation in Gandhi Medical College here in Hyderabad. It is one of the nodal centers for patients suffering from COVID 19. So, right now, we have about 500 plus active cases here who are being treated. Which is why today I've been asked to take this webinar to create awareness among general public and to suggest some safety measures to protect ourselves from this disease. So uh, to start with, the outline for today's webinar will be, I will be talking a little bit about the introduction and then the what is COVID-19 actually. So I'll be talking about that, and then um, the different types of coronaviruses and why this particular virus is called as novel coronavirus. And then I'll be talking about um, the transmission of this disease and the safety measures that we need to take, and what are some of the myths that are being circulated false reports about COVID-19. And I'll be talking in detail about disinfection of household objects and vegetables and edible items. Then I'll be giving a brief note about vaccines. So, I just want to confirm if it is clear. Yeah. So these are the objectives of today's webinar. So why is this particular disease called as COVID-19? So it stands for coronavirus disease, which originated in Wuhan, China in 2019. As most of you know, it all started in a vegetable in a wet market where they sell living animals. So it started there, and it is caused by a coronavirus called SARS coronavirus 2. So it's called novel coronavirus because it is new. This particular strain of coronavirus has never existed on Earth before. However, the other uh, groups of coronaviruses have caused certain diseases previously, like SARS, that is sudden acute respiratory syndrome, which we came across in the year 2002. And we also came across another deadly disease called MERS, which is Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, in 2012. Now, both of these were caused by different strains of coronaviruses. But right now, COVID 19 is a pandemic because it spreads easily from one person to the other, and also because we do not have a vaccine yet. So, these are the differences between the earlier pandemics that we had. Um, and the main difference that we have with COVID 19 and these is that these diseases did not spread until a person was symptomatic. But COVID 19, it spreads easily even if the person is asymptomatic. That is, even if the person does not have any symptoms, he still can transmit the disease. So as you can see on the screen, the SARS had a death rate of about 10 to 15%, and MERS was more deadly because it had a death rate of 35%. Now a little more information about COVID-19. The death rate is about 0.2%. We can say that it is limited because of insufficient testing, or also because we have a lot of people who are not symptomatic and who are asymptomatic carriers of this disease. Then in case of other global pandemics like influenza, which is also called as common cold, we have vaccines for it right now, and we have treatments also. Then this influenza virus, which causes common cold, it keeps changing every year, but our bodies have seen some parts of it, which is why we have some residual immunity against the common cold. But as I said, this novel coronavirus is a new strain. So since our body does not have any immunity towards it, that is why we see so many number of cases, and it's so difficult to treat this disease. Then coming to transmission of this disease. Um, so it is common in people and in many different species of animals, including camels, cats, bats, and even cattle. This disease mainly spreads through respiratory droplets. And we have got many questions from the participants here as to whether this disease is airborne. So the answer to that is no, it is not airborne. It can spread only through respiratory droplets. And because these droplets have a particular mass and weight, they tend to fall on certain objects nearby from an infected person. And those objects that have the infected respiratory droplets are commonly called as fomites. So when a patient who is infected coughs, sneezes, or even talks, these droplets can spread from one person to the other. And once you touch such an object and unknowingly touch your eyes, nose, or mouth, you can get infected. Excuse me. So there's let's watch a short video regarding how this disease is transmitted from one person to the other. Yeah. Till then, I can answer another question that we got as to whether pet animals can transmit this disease. So from various studies, we have got this information that uh, till date, there are no cases where pet animals have transmitted diseases to human beings. But it's important that we don't let our pets wander in places, especially where there are high rates of infection. So as you can see, the respiratory droplets have spread from one person to the other through different surfaces, through different objects. So some of the key structural components of this virus are this spike protein, because of which it got its name, that is coronavirus. And it has the membrane protein. Also, it has an envelope covering it. So that's about the transmission of the disease. So after watching this video, it is very clear that hand washing technique, hand wash, a perfect and thorough hand wash is very important in order to prevent this disease. So yeah, let's move on to the next subtopic, that is how to recognize the signs of this disease. The initial symptoms of this disease are cough, a running nose, or a sore throat and fever. Some patients have also shown to suffer from diarrhea. But in some other cases, it can get severe and patients may experience breathing problems, or they may develop lung infections called as pneumonia. Now, the most common symptom that we see is fever. Although we see that according to the reports now, 80% of the people do not have any symptoms. Whereas the symptoms can occur anywhere between 2 to 7 days after infection. So 99% of the people who have symptoms have fever. It could be mild, it could just be about 38 degrees or 99-degree Fahrenheit. 70% of the people have generalized weakness, which is also called as fatigue. 50% of the patients come with cough, but it's only a small number, a small percentage of people who land in severe illness, like hypoxia, which is low oxygen levels because of the damage to the lungs caused by this virus, or pneumonia, as I said. So many people have asked, sorry? Okay. So many people have asked this question, whether the elderly have more chances of infection. So the answer to that is no. All groups of people are equally susceptible to this disease. They have equal chances of getting this disease if they are infected. But definitely the elderly have, in case they are affected, there are more chances that they might land in this 15% who have severe illness, which is why it is very important to control the following risk factors in case you have them. That is uncontrolled diabetes or hypertension, also called as high blood sugar levels or high blood pressure, lung disorders like asthma, COPD, or people who are chronic smokers, then even people who have chronic kidney disease and who are on dialysis, people who have low immunity levels, like the elderly aged more than 60 years, and people who have had a history of cancer and who are on chemotherapy or have taken chemotherapy in the past. So this group of people should be very careful, stay indoors most of the time unless it's an emergency, and make sure that your sugar levels and your blood pressures are under control. Yeah. So for the people who are asymptomatic, they can spread the disease to other people through their secretions or respiratory droplets from 5th day to 10th day commonly, but there are many studies which show that a person who is infected can transmit the disease and up to until even a month after infection, which is why the government is stressing a lot about isolation and isolation centers, either at home or in the hospital. So in case you have the symptoms which I have mentioned, it's always better to isolate yourself at home. And if the symptoms worsen, then contact your doctor. Or by the end of this webinar, I'll be sharing some local helpline numbers so you can contact any of them if you need help. So many people are curious to know about how this testing for COVID-19 is going on. So what is the strategy behind, and based on what protocol this testing is being done? So these are the following points that we have regarding this question that we have. So I would just like to briefly mention few points. So all symptomatic patients, all the patients who have the symptoms like cough or fever and who have a history of international travel in the last 14 days should get a test done for COVID-19. And also patients who have been in contact with positive cases. And if they have symptoms, then they should come forward and get themselves tested. Also, if you're a healthcare worker, a doctor, a nurse, or working in a hospital or lab, and if you have any symptoms of COVID-19, then you should better get yourself tested. The other group of people who should consider getting a test are asymptomatic people or symptomatic people living in containment areas or red zone areas. Yeah. So those are the key points among the strategy for COVID-19 testing. So treatment. Again, this is one question being asked frequently as to how these patients are being treated. So firstly, not all patients who get infected with this disease require medical supportive care. Isolation at home or hospital is important for at least 14 days from the time of diagnosis or from the time you get to know that you have this disease. So in the hospital where I work, the treatment is mainly focused on supportive care. That is, we try to give them antibiotics to prevent further bacterial infections, and we give them supplements, vitamin supplements, and other foods that can improve their immunity. And as I said, 15% of people have severe illness. So for such people, supplemental oxygen might be needed. And also, if those people have underlying diseases like diabetes or hypertension, we give them medicines to control their sugar and blood pressure levels. So since I'm an anesthesiologist, my role here in this hospital is we usually deal in the with the critically ill people here in the ICUs. It's very challenging to see the pain and suffering that they go through. But we most of the times I try to be professional in my conversation with them, but at the same time we try to be kind, because most of the patients here, when they get tested, they are not allowed tested positive, they're not allowed to meet their family members. So most of the times many patients go into depression or they feel low often. So it's important that we be kind to them. And apart from the treatment that we give, we should make sure that they are fine even emotionally. So getting to the next question, can a person develop COVID-19 after getting cured from it? This is one question that I got from 2 or 3 participants. Various studies have shown that reactivation is unlikely. That is, it is not quite possible in case of this disease. But still, there is some controversy regarding this. And since I said that this virus is new, so a lot more studies have to be done in order to get an answer for this question. However, from the studies that we already have, we can say that if a person tests negative and if he gets cured, then that immunity can last for about a year. And later, if this virus undergoes mutations, then he can get infected again and can have symptoms. Now, coming to the key slide of this webinar, how to protect yourself and others. So most importantly, maintain social distance. The government is stressing a lot about this, but I see that the general public is not understanding the importance of this safety measure. So when I say keep distance, it means maintaining at least 6 feet distance from the other person. When you stand in a queue or when you're in a crowd, maintain at least 2 feet distance. And this is not how social distancing is done. So when you go to the supermarkets or anywhere in a crowded area, maintain social distance. And try to avoid events and meetings as much as possible. The second important point is wash hands thoroughly. And that means that you have to wash your hands for at least 20 seconds. If you don't have a hand wash at home, then soap and water is also very effective. And if you're outside and you do not have access to water, you can use a sanitizer, but make sure it has at least 60% of alcohol for it to be effective. Then when you greet others from now on, avoid handshakes, even if it seems rude and unusual to you. Then if you have to sneeze, sneeze into your elbow or into a tissue and wash your hands immediately afterwards. So for children, how do you train children to wash their hands for 20 seconds? We see that most of the children are in a rush. So you can train them by, making them sing a song or a rhyme that takes about 20 seconds. And by the end of it, they can wash their hands. So these are the hand wash techniques to wash your hands thoroughly. First, wet your hands under running water. Then apply soap and rub palms together in order to ensure complete coverage. Then you have to rub the back of your hands, then the gap between the fingers. Then you have to rub your knuckles and pay particular attention to the thumbs. Then your fingertips. Then wash your hands with water and dry them thoroughly with a clean towel. So this is how you can maintain social distance. Now, another commonly discussed topic is face masks. There is a lot of controversy regarding this. The Center for Disease Control has sent a recent guideline saying that it is not always necessary for you to wear a face mask, but from the various studies that I've gone through, I would say that it's better that you have a face mask. It can be even a cloth mask that you can make at home because it reduces the chances of infection. So we have various types of face masks. It can be a cloth mask. It can be a surgical mask like this, which is commonly available in the pharmacies. But for people who work in the hospitals, and especially for people who work with COVID-19 patients, they should have a special mask called N95 mask, because we usually do procedures like intubation and other procedures where these respiratory droplets can get mixed into the air and cause aerosolization of these particles. So otherwise, if you're not a healthcare professional, then a surgical mask or a cloth mask should be fine. And you can wear it whenever you go out to buy groceries or to the markets or even to work. But I would like to stress on this point that wearing a mask does not protect you completely from the disease. Still, the most important point is respiratory droplets. So even if you wear a mask, come back home, wash your hands thoroughly, and then go about with your other activities. So how do you properly use a surgical mask? First, clean your hands with soap and water. And before you use the mask, inspect for any holes or tears. Then, usually there is a metal strip here on the upper end. So that should be on the upper end. And after you wear the mask, make sure that you pinch the upper part on your nose and also pull the lower part down your chin so that it provides a complete coverage. And also try try to avoid touching the mask while you're wearing it, because the outer surface of the mask may have some respiratory droplets, or when you go out it may have some source of infection. So avoid touching the outer surface. Once you come back home, you have to remove your mask holding these strips that you have, and then discard it in a closed bin where it is not exposed to any people outside. So that's how you wear a surgical mask and pinch it over your nose. One key point that I would like to stress on is do not use a mask for children who are under 2 years of old, because they cannot communicate if they are being suffocated. So do not use masks for younger children. Yeah. So what are some boosting food items that we have? So vitamin C rich food that we commonly have in our country is oranges, papaya, and then pepper, sweet potato, berries, and tomatoes. Then vitamin D rich food like seafood or dairy products, milk and cheese, and also eggs. Zinc is also very important to improve your immunity. It is rich in meat and other nuts. Also proteins, uh, which is available in meat and eggs. So emotional health is something that is usually overseen, and many people, as I said, feel low because of the lockdown. They're not able to communicate with their friends or meet their friends, go out. So these are some points that I would suggest which you can do to improve, to maintain an good emotional health. First is engage in fun activities with family members at home. Make good use of technology and improve your skills and knowledge. Also, reach out to friends and family members who live alone. And you can do so over phone calls or chats and check often if they're fine. You can also spend time for exercise, yoga, and spiritual activities. And I would also suggest that you try to maintain normal routine. Even if you're not going out to work, try to maintain a normal routine. Uh, yes. So these are some myth busters. Many people have these false perceptions regarding different food items or certain facts. So I would like to clear them. First is, can eating garlic help prevent infection with the new coronavirus? So the answer to that is no. Garlic can surely improve your immunity levels, but it does not fight directly with the coronavirus, or it does not cure coronavirus. Then some people ask if exposing ourselves to the sun or higher temperatures can prevent or cure COVID-19. So that is also not true. this disease can be transmitted in any climate, whether it is hot or cold. It can be transmitted in any sort of climate or temperature. And there are many drugs that have that the governments across the world, they're trying to search for a drug that can cure this disease. But as of now, there are no drugs licensed for the treatment of this disease. Yes. And some people think that once you catch this virus, this disease will stay lifelong, but that is not true. You can surely recover from this disease provided your immunity levels are good and if you do not have any underlying diseases. Yes, this is a funny one. Some people say that drinking alcohol can protect you against COVID-19, but it is not true. In fact, it can be dangerous. Yes, and these are some other myths. Yeah. Yeah, I would also like to throw some light on this question. Can COVID-19 be passed from a woman to her unborn or newborn baby? This is for all the pregnant women out there. Please do not panic because uh, we still do not know whether a pregnant woman with COVID-19 can pass the virus to her baby during pregnancy or during delivery. But to date, the virus has not been found in samples of the amniotic fluid or breast milk. So you do not have to panic about this. As I mentioned earlier, this virus can affect all groups of people. And adding pepper to your soup or meals does not prevent or cure COVID-19. And also thermal scanners, which are being used these days, they cannot detect COVID-19 as such. They can only detect whether you have a fever. Yeah. Uh, we have various disinfectants in the market now. Uh, make sure that these are being used only to disinfect objects and you don't come in contact with uh, these disinfectants. If it enters your body, it can be dangerous. Well, now I would like to move on to the next aspect, that is how you can disinfect certain objects in your home. So you can sanitize your phone, specs, or keys and other items after you get back home from work or from a market using a sanitizer. As I said, it should have at least 60% of alcohol. What about fruits and vegetables? This is a commonly asked question. The virus can remain on fruits and vegetables for about 6 hours. So leave them in the cover for at least 4 hours. Then wash them with warm water and baking soda to ensure complete safety. So what about food items that cannot be washed, like bananas or onions? Put them in a closed space where heat cannot reach them directly. Do not expose yourself to them for the next 4 hours and do not cook them immediately. So what about milk and cheese, some dairy products? What you can do is wash the cover with soap and water, discard the outer cover and transfer the items to a clean vessel and carefully dispose the cover into a closed bin. So in various studies, it has been shown that virus can survive on plastic, metal and cold drink cans for about 24 to 48 hours. So what about cooked food from outside? I'm sure many people are missing food from outside. Uh, but ideally, try to avoid cooked food from outside. But in case you tend to buy pizzas or cakes for certain occasions, make sure that you discard the outer packet or box immediately. And do not try to use sanitizers on these cardboard boxes because it has not been shown to be effective. Now, what about cash, newspaper, and other stationery items? So the virus cannot remain on these items for long, but still keep them aside for 3 hours before using. And you can use sanitizers on pens or other metal or metal pencil boxes. And then, can the virus spread through water? So in the studies that we have so far, it has not been detected in drinking water. However, conventional drinking water treatment methods that use filtration and disinfection methods, such as those in most municipal drinking water systems, should remove or inactivate the virus that causes this disease. Now, in case you tend to buy any new clothes, keep them outside in the balcony for about 2 days. Then you can wash them thoroughly before use. And if you get any couriers or letters, keep them aside for 4 hours. And always carry your own pen when you sign the receipts brought by the postman. Also, at this point of time, I would like to suggest that when you go out, especially now that uh, certain people are going out for work, carry your own cutlery, carry your own pens and stationery, and your own boxes for food in order to stay safe. Coming to the next point is how to disinfect certain hard objects like doorknobs or sinks, tables, and switches. So before you start this process, wear disposable gloves. First, clean the surfaces to remove dust and other germs. Then, always use disinfectants that have sodium hypochlorite, which is proven to be very effective. Uh, this is also called as bleaching powder commonly. So it has to be diluted. Okay, as per the instructions given on the box that you buy or on the packet that you buy. Uh, but commonly, how you dilute it is use 5 tablespoons in 3 liters of water, or if you're using a lesser quantity, you can use 4 teaspoons in 1 liter of water. How to disinfect electronic items. So usually the manufacturer's advice would mention, manufacturer's instructions would tell you how to disinfect them. But in case you don't have it, consider wipeable covers like this. And you can use alcohol wipes or disinfectant wipes on these covers. Then coming to the last point, a brief note on vaccines. Many people are anxious to know whether we have a vaccine yet or when will we have a vaccine against this disease. So more than 100 COVID-19 vaccines are in development, and all of these focus on triggering different immune responses, which is antibodies. So antibodies, as most of you know, are something that a body produces when it comes across an infection like a bacteria or a virus. So how this vaccine will work is, as I mentioned earlier, there are various parts of the virus, like the spike proteins or the membrane proteins. So various scientists are trying to work on these uh, particles, and they try to put them in a harmless virus. They replicate them, and then uh, these particles are introduced into a person who is willing to volunteer for certain research work. Then when such a virus particle is introduced into a person, it will produce antibodies and it will activate immune cells in the body. Then the next time a person comes across this virus, immediately our body will start producing antibodies, and that will trigger cells which will fight against this virus. Now, leading researchers say that it may take at least about a year for the world to gain access to a vaccine. Now, we have different countries trying to get a vaccine, including our country, India. We have a research center in Pune, but they have said that it may take at least a year to get the vaccine. Now, it takes a lot of time to get a vaccine because there are different phases of trials in order to test the side effects and in order to test its safety among the general population. So these are certain COVID helpline numbers. In case you have any symptoms, you can contact them. And these are some references from which I have taken my study material. So in case you have any other doubts apart from those I've mentioned, you can go to these sites and browse them. Thank you everyone for listening. In case you have any other doubts, I think there will be a short question and answer session, so you can ask your doubts in that session. Thank you.
Dr. Sharon. Hello.
Hello.
No. We heard that some patients, they don't even positive symptoms, they won't appear. How can we identify
Yes.
those kind of persons?
Okay.
Even he
So
is affected with the COVID, but that symptoms
yes.
will not appear. So he may go around and meet other people. How can that person identify?
Yes, brother. So actually, uh, what you can do is that is why I've mentioned you have to focus on other aspects, like has the person had an international history of international travel in the last 14 days, or uh, did that person come in contact with any other patient who is admitted now or who has symptoms and who has been tested positive. Or sometimes, you know, people try to they do not show, they do not tell anyone else that they have symptoms because they are afraid that they will be taken to the hospital and put in an isolation center. So in case you know anybody who has been in contact with a positive patient or who is from a containment zone, always maintain social distance and follow the safety measures that I've mentioned in the webinar.
So these symptoms will automatically within a 14 days will appear. If person infected with the positive, within 14 days that symptoms is going to be appear, or automatically that if they have a good resistive power,
Immunity.
automatically that disease can go.
Yes. Yes, you're right actually, because in case symptoms appear, they will appear within about 7 to 14 days. But there are patients who do not manifest symptoms at all, and then they develop, if they have a good immunity, they develop antibodies and they recover.
Okay.
So you
Thank you.
may not know that they even had the disease unless you do different kind of